Hello and welcome to this episode of my YouTube channel, which I've created to discuss my book, The Dichotic Dilemma, The Fabric of Life, and the issues raised therein. Today I'm going to start off by talking about the conservative conference, which just recently went underway here in the UK, and particularly address the speech given by both Boris Johnson to some extent and Priti Patel, because of course, as we know, Priti Patel has in many ways waged a war on immigrants, and it has been the policy of the UK government to take a tough stance on immigration, with the whole hostile environment and the policies and attitudes therein. And of course, Boris Johnson's speech was full of the excitability you do expect from a Boris, and the strong whiff of rampant nationalism, and of course addressing the seeming culture war that we are inside of, particularly to do with the Black Lives Matter and the pulling down of statues of colonial figures, slavery figures, and individuals of British history who, by the eyes of many, have tainted records. But of course, this difference of opinion that people have is indicative to me of the idea that I did realize and stated as the dichotic dilemma. Realization of the power of perspective. In this instance, someone like Boris Johnson, who said that he's proud of the British legacy, essentially, which of course is difficult to hear for those that have been adversely impacted by that legacy. But that's the world we live in, the world of duality, the world of difference, the world of differing perspectives, which obviously leads to the sort of acrimonious existence that humanity has experienced for as far and for as long as we can tell. And it's into this that I wish to speak to and look to address by expanding and expounding on the idea of the dichotic dilemma. My position is quite simple. I am a human being, though black or clad in black skin. And it's with each passing day, I'm becoming more aware of the fact that I am more a human being rather than a black man. And ultimately, we are all human beings more than the racial and cultural subdivisions that we find ourselves in by virtue of birth and geographical circumstance. And of course, if you really drill down into it, we are but just specks of dust, microscopic, nanoscopic dust in an infinite universe, which is how I choose to expand my wider vision of what it is to be a human being. when you look up to the moon and you look up to the stars and become aware of the infinite grandeur of existence out there, and yet we find ourselves here divided. So with each passing day, I become more affirmed in my mission, my personal mission, to really hit home and make it be known unequivocally about our collective humanity and ultimately our oneness. And when observed in the grandest manner, our connection to the universe, inextricably, each and every single one of us. This is way more fantastic, way more uplifting than the divisive world that we live inside of, where our elected officials speak of and down based on their political persuasion on those that find themselves to be in vulnerable situations. In this instance, immigrants, who by and large are of a darker skin shade, just as myself, which is to me indicative of the history of this world that we've inherited. So when I hear Prit Patel speak of lefty do-gooders and attacking lawyers who are doing their job and practicing the profession and upholding the legality which ensures and enshrines the safety of everyone, and being belittled by the Home Secretary in such a bellicose and divisive manner, is truly frightening. That's the thinking of people like Trump and Orban in Hungary, Bolsonaro in Brazil, has clearly taken hold and seems to be very much alive in the United Kingdom as well through this conservative government. I do not take away from the conservative government. Ultimately, my position is apolitical, because getting into the dirty dealings of politics will take away ultimately from my wider message. But I do play the role, as I'm giving myself, that of a social commentator and in many ways a social observer. So I cannot not comment on the political dimension of the world that I see as I try and expand on the ideas that I discovered through my writing, particularly the idea of the dichotic dilemma. Ultimately, it seems that confusion abounds, and humanity is in the throes of it. But ultimately, division seems to be an integral part of life. But before I begin to philosophize, I'll go on to say, based on my observation of the general political trends in light of the debacle of the debate between Trump and Biden. The question is, where are we going? When clearly Trump, when pressed, was hesitant, reluctant, and evasive about outrightly condemning the Proud Boys. I'd be truly surprised if Donald Trump didn't know who the Proud Boys were and are. And there was another gentleman on Piers Morgan's program, Good Morning Britain, Mr. Gorka, I think it was, who also was equally evasive about condemning the Proud Boys. In fact, choosing to divert from the argument by condemning Antifa, and but all the while refusing to answer whether he condemned the Proud Boys. So clearly we're at a very interesting time where in many ways white nationalists are emboldened, and the ideas that plagued the last century leading to the World War and Adolf Hitler are coming back quite fiercely. And even the Labour government under Keir Starmer seems to be pulling to the right quite severely and embracing nationalism, which in my eyes is a cancer. Yes, nationalism is a cancer. But yet, it seems the fact that the random circumstance of what country I was born in should create such an allegiance that I look down on every other country only for the sake of my own. I couldn't think of anything more limited in terms of appreciating the wider grandeur of the human condition. But that's my own idealism. But back to the immigrants. Instead of focusing on the hostile environment and vilifying these people and vilifying the people defending them, wouldn't we be better served as a species addressing the issues that find these people having to clamber into boats, rickety boats, risking life and limb across the ocean, certain death probable, and a safe landing improbable? What would drive a human being to do that? Of course, it's a complicated issue, and it's a complex matter. And I understand the need for a government to look after its borders. But I think we're focusing on the wrong things. We're focusing on the symptoms. When one can look at, for example, the impact of the Iraq War in destabilizing the Middle East, which in many ways led to the rise of ISIS and ultimately the fall of Libya, seeming to be the unleashing of the consequences of the flow of migrants into Europe. And of course, the long shadow of colonialism and empire, which created the poverty and destitution that has people like me in droves have to leave their homes in search of a better future. I can assure you that no one wants to be an immigrant. No one wants to be in a place where they are not wanted. I can tell you that with absolute certainty. So instead of attacking migrants, Priti Patel, and people of the Windrush generation having to fight to stay in a country they've lived in for years, lifetimes, some of them, aren't we better placed to start thinking of final solutions to problems that have plagued us time immemorial? Instead, Priti Patel, of wanting to sound tough and strong, fair but firm, as you say, how about we start with as much energy and verve, really looking at the global solutions that'll mean that people don't have to live in destitution in the places that they are, and see the only solution to their problems be having to get on a boat and cross the ocean and the seas with probable death a certainty. That seems to me a much better way to govern. And I suppose at this stage, as I say, I do ponder on these matters. And since the time of Enoch Powell, we've had politicians and home secretaries create the fear of the migrant, of the other. Nigel Farage, with his poster of the invading brown faces. And of course, the incomparable Donald Trump. One would say this is 2020, for whatever that means. But I suppose it's fair to say the human condition remains the same. Ultimately, unless and until we really start to see the humanity of all of us, then in 2100, the Priti Patel of her day will be talking about the hostile environment and the fear of the other, and the need to come down hard on those dodgy immigrants. In any event, these are the matters that consume my mind pretty much every day, and why I have decided ultimately on this channel. I do believe that the discourse and the realizations within the book have led me to this ultimate realization. In my younger days, I was angry, an angry young black man, and felt very much entitled to my rage at the world and the injustice of it. And by many accounts, I was probably a black separatist, feeling that perhaps if we lived divided, the chances of people like me not having to succumb to the inferiority label that has been foisted onto us over the centuries might have a better chance if we had our own place and were allowed to have our own economies, unencumbered by the overarching arm of Western imperialism. But I don't know if that is a final solution, because, of course, as I said at the beginning, we're all human beings. Then maybe a lasting solution would be a realization of the truth of that. So I suppose at that stage, I will carry on reading from the book and hope that the message and the ultimate commitment that is growing day by day inside of me, that we somehow, some way, manage to raise our consciousness to a place where we can realize something better. Because it's deeply distressing when conservative Home Secretary after conservative Home Secretary after bellicose politician Nigel Farage keep coming with their divisive rhetoric. We are all human beings. I have to reassure you that black people, we are people too. And I am a human being with feelings. And the fact that that has to be explained is shocking. But of course, it's a reflection of the history we've inherited. So sifting through that pain is what my writing has been about. And as I say, it's very distressing to hear Prit Patel, as eloquently and as polished as she did, with all the finery of her education and public speaking training, attack lefty do-gooders and lawyers and immigrants. So I will carry on with the reading. We're now at the introduction stage. Introduction. My name is Raleigh Tandazani Chiuta, which before I even begin is a paradox in itself. My forename is an Englishman's name, which is curious because I'm of African descent. My second name is Ndebele, which is a tribe found in Zimbabwe, and my surname is Chiuta, which is Shona, another tribe found in Zimbabwe. Therefore, in that alone, are a lot of contradictions or amalgamations, showing that a lot has transpired through time, through the transition of time, and a lot of things have been moved out of their place of origin. I'm 21 years old at present as I write, 21 years, 5 months, and 28 days, old to be exact, as I commence writing this book. If I've done this correctly, it should tally with the fact that I was born on the 23rd of November, 1984, as a Zimbabwean. On that day, when I emerged from my mother's nourishing womb, I could never have begun to fathom the complexities of the life I was being delivered into. I do not remember much of my childhood, as is usually the case, from about birth to 4 years of age. However, as far as I can remember, I've always been very analytical and questioning as a person, very aware of the dynamics of life prevailing around me and trying to make sense of them, to figure out what it all means. This is what I believe has led me to sit down and write, in an effort to see if I can express my perceptions to the world. I find the world to be a very complex place, a place where there are exponentially more questions than answers. For example, why is the world the way it is? Why do we do the things we do? Why are we alive? What are we? Why do human beings suffer at times? And what is the purpose of emotional turmoil and pain? However, by and large, what is the purpose of an existence that pits us against each other, groups and individuals, from the day we are born? The resultant consequence being a need to survive and express dominance that at times leads us to great acts of murderous violence and malevolence against each other. With this in mind, the frustration of what happens around me was truly beginning to get the better of me, and I was becoming increasingly ever more frustrated. Frustrated with my never ending search for answers and coming to constant dead ends and blanks. I was under great emotional and psychological pressure, trying to balance out the complex conundrums of human existence. Ideas of fairness, famine, injustice, war, death, political unrest, and all other manner of negative consequence that can befall human beings during our existence. I had a very negative perception of life. Things that used to make me happy were now only having a momentary effect. However, I was fortunate in that I had an amazing and good support system in the form of a loving family and excellent parents who showed sacrifice, patience, and provided good guidance. I therefore found solace and respite in the proverbial pen and paper. And what emerged was my inner thoughts and feelings, ventilation, my never ending affair with societal dynamics, the constant, insistent, and incessant ramblings in my mind. My father told me it was poetry. Yes, some of it is poetry, the voice of my subconscious, a marvelous cathartic experience, without which I'm not sure of what end I would have reached. However, I should say that what I found I had to say was wide ranging and referenced many aspects of life. Thus, many ideas will be expressed in this book. Hopefully, the message is coherent and useful, as my aim is to try and offer a positive and constructive outlook on life, which highlights the pragmatic challenges of existence, which always requires us to appeal to our better nature. So that's the end of today's reading. I do hope that whoever, at whatever point, listens to this and hears it truly gets the emphasis and the intention with which I'm coming with this work and effort. It is a complex world, and I want to assure you that I certainly know and don't believe that I have the answers. I'm not here as anyone purporting to know what needs to be done or how it can be done. I've already expressed this in earlier videos, that I am just but a simple man. But what I will say is that I have an obsessive drive and indefatigable commitment to the words that I'm speaking right now. And for the past 35 years, or at least since I was taken by this conviction in my early days, I've been trying to figure out in what way I can contribute. Should I be a social activist, a seasoned campaigner, a political agent? Hopefully one day, a multimillionaire who can, with the money he has, pursue his interests uh, and seek to bring the change that he wants to. And then I was always terrified to be a political agent because it seems like quite a sinister arena. And certainly as an African, it's dangerous. And even also as a black person, if you look at the civil rights activists and the leaders that have come, the African leaders like Thomas Sankara and people like that, that got killed and assassinated, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Steve Biko, the list is endless. One thought, do I need to die to make a difference? So I've been ruminating and stewing and pondering. And ultimately, this seems to be what's become apparent. Thank you to the marvels of the 21st century, I can sit in the safety of my home and comfort and get my message out there. And as I stated in my last video, if only one person watches this and discovers the true intention, the true deeper meaning of my words, which escape even me, because I too am struggling with my own prejudices and inadequacies as a human being. But I believe the message to be of value. And if thank you.